Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas visiting with you. So happy to welcome today Dr. Finney Cruzilla from Sattler College. Good morning, Dr. Cruzilla.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Now, Sattler College, the exciting thing is you're about to graduate your inaugural class, yes?
Yeah, we're about to start our first class, so they haven't graduated yet. They'll be freshmen.
Got it. So you just are launching this new college.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, tell me all about it.
Yeah, so it began when I was still in school. I was a person who went to medical school and also did a PhD. And while I was doing that, I was a student at Harvard, and I lived in the undergraduate dorms there. And I could see that the higher education world had a lot of deficiencies, and the typical college or university in the United States suffers from the same ailments. And those ailments are, number one, they are too expensive. I think most of us are aware of the very high cost of education. Mm-hmm. Number two, the courses that people take are often very random, very poorly thought out. Sometimes it feels like you're dealing with a flock of sheep going in every possible direction. I would see the students' transcripts after 4 years, and often there was very little coherence. And then third and finally, there was a real problem with character, particularly from a Christian perspective, where many students would degenerate with respect to losing their faith, getting addicted to pornography, getting involved in drugs, cheating, etc. And there's very little proactive development of character that happens in college. And in fact, most people expect today that college is going to be a time when you, quote, sow your wild oats and you degenerate morally. So all three of those problems we wanted to address with a fresh and vibrant model of higher education.
I think many students might have those thoughts cross their mind, and then they would go about their business, graduate, and get into their career. Very few would say, I'm going to start this a new way and try a new thing. Help me understand how you got from point A to point B, where now you're actually coming to fruition, starting your freshman class.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a person who I'm probably wired as an entrepreneur. I've worked in venture capital, starting companies, started my own company before, and I'm just a big believer that when you see a problem, the first response you should have is, how can I be a part of the solution? How can I fix that? And being that I was in education for so long, finishing the 2 doctorates that I did, I felt I had a unique vantage point to speak into this and could lead the charge given my experience in education as well as my experience in starting companies.
It's pretty awesome when you think how you actually really have been prepared for this. What are your doctorates in?
So my first one is a PhD in chemistry, and then my second doctorate is an MD, and both of them I got from Harvard.
Wow. Okay, that is so impressive. Let us all just let that sink in for a second. But in the meantime, you could be having an amazing medical practice right now and living high off the hog. Instead, you are launching a Christian college. Why? What's in your heart?
Yeah, so when I think about those 3 issues that we just talked about, when we look at the cost problem, the curriculum problem, and the character problem, the one that's definitely the most motivating to me is the character problem. So right now in America, your child who goes off to college will have about a 70 to 80% chance, assuming they start off with a Christian church background, of no longer being practicing Christians by the time they're done. That's an amazing statistics, and that's been validated by 4 different studies. A mixture of Christian and secular studies has found that very consistent pattern there.
That's pretty terrifying for any parents who are listening to that right now.
Exactly, yeah. And I wish that more people even just knew that number so that they could at least be more guarded and more prepared. So yeah, it should be heartbreaking. We should be tearing our hair out over that because our children are ultimately our greatest treasure on earth that we have, and we need to think very seriously about what we're doing with the choices about higher education.
Absolutely.
I was going to just say that there's a fascinating verse. It's in the Bible. It's in Luke chapter 6, verse 40, where Jesus says, that every student, when he's fully trained, will be like his teacher. And I sometimes call that the iron law of discipleship or the iron law of education, that you're becoming more and more like your teachers. And when you look at the typical faculty member at the typical college or university in America, they're usually not people that would be those that we would admire from a faith perspective. And yet we're putting our young people at the feet of those very people. And so it shouldn't be a surprise, based on that principle that Jesus describes, this iron law of discipleship, that people are becoming more secular and agnostic and atheist.
Wow. So tell me about Sattler College. Is it a bricks and mortar college? Is it an online college? What are we talking about?
Yeah, we do have a physical presence. We have a beautiful campus. It's actually where I'm calling from right now. We're right in downtown Boston, very close to the Capitol building and the Freedom Trail for those who have been to Boston.
Wow.
We have a beautiful view of Boston. We're right on the 17th floor. And one of the emphases that we have here is on discipleship. And really, that's difficult to do online. And so for that reason, we do have real classrooms and a physical space, just like our competitor college.
How are you going to do what you do? You are situated in a very interesting place, and yeah, a lot of academia known for right in that area, and but also some very different thinking people as far as moral development.
Yeah. So what we have is we have an academic program. It's 4 years. Students get a bachelor's degree as a result of that. We have 5 majors, but then we have in parallel to that, really as a signal that more than just being developed mentally and intellectually, we have a 4-year discipleship program so that when students graduate, they get not only a diploma, but they get a statement of Christian discipleship, which will be a celebration and a marker of how much they've grown over those 4 years. So instead of degenerating, like I talked about before, where the average student is going to be more addicted to pornography and such things, we want to actually reverse that and have people emerge as stronger Christians, as stronger individuals from a character perspective and a faith perspective. And so we have this 4-year discipleship program that we have crafted. We could spend a lot of time talking about it, but in a nutshell, we are about making sure that college is addressing the whole person, not just the mind, not just the intellect, but it's about the heart, it's about the soul. It's about these bigger picture questions that we think are really important to begin to grasp, even when, say, a person is 18 or 20 years old.
Yes. Well, I think the mistake we make is we assume that they're adults, but children are still forming, they're still developing, and it's a critical age group to be developing. What kinds of activities are you going to engage them to earn that certificate?
Yeah, and I want to reiterate what you just said, that we are so moldable. I'm sure most of us, when we think about our experiences in college and how much we changed as a result of the people that we spent time with, for example, it's remarkable. To answer your question specifically, a lot of this happens in the context of small groups. So I've been involved in small groups for many, many years now. And you see certainly these described in the Bible. Jesus had his 12 disciples, and he even had an inner ring of 3, Peter, James, and John. And the locus of transformation really tends to happen in these small, fairly intimate groups of friends that can discuss life and learn. They are guided by mentors, and we have a whole range of activities. They're ranging from basic accountability. So one of the things that I'm a huge fan of is just making sure that you have a group of people who are watching over you in a loving, kind way, not in a policing way or in a coercive manner, but then also doing positive activities where one develops one's growth in a whole range of activities. We have a lot of modules that our students are going to go through where they learn all the basics that I wish I learned in college, how to be a peacemaker. How does one learn how to relate to others in a constructive way? How does one learn how to read the Bible properly? How does one learn these whole sets of things that most of us are never formally trained in? And like I said, doing that in the context of a small group where we can encourage one another as we progress towards these goals.
What about the coursework itself? You said that your experience was it was so random. Some might
Right.
argue, well, you're getting a rich, broad curricula to decide what direction you want to go. How do you focus in on that curricula?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So we are I'd say generally leaning towards what we would call a classical model of education, which is an education, for those who don't know, that is rooted in much more timeless subjects and truths that are part of what normally we had thought of as what people would learn when they went to college. So there's a fascinating study that came out several years ago that showed that, again, this is the typical college. What happens is people are actually selecting their courses based on what TV show is popular. So when Law and Order was popular, people were going to criminology.
That's true.
When when various medical shows, ER and things like that were popular, there was people would go more in the medical fields.
Mm-hmm.
So
Law.
instead of that,
Mm-hmm.
instead of that, we have a model where everyone does a set of subjects like, for example, Hebrew and Greek, and everyone has to do Old Testament and church history and all of these great subjects, expository writing, statistics. And they're things that are much more timeless and that will equip students very well to be great thinkers and holistically people who are broad in their capacities.
What majors will you be offering?
So we have 5 majors. They are history, biology, computer science, business, and biblical studies.
And do you expect to then grow into a graduate school as well? Or first things first, Susie, let us get this thing off the ground first.
Yeah, for right now, it's first things first.
That's
We
right.
would probably, we'll probably first expand the number of majors that we have from those 5 to probably more like 10. And then down the road, who knows? We would love to if that makes sense. But yeah, as you say, for now, we want to just focus on excellence at the college level.
Mm-hmm. How are you going to keep the costs down?
Yeah, one of the really interesting features of the whole higher education world is that it's become an arms race where actually a lot of the reasons for these cost increases are not because of the cost of education, but it's because colleges and universities are competing around stadiums and dorms and fancy bells and whistles that are really more recruiting tools than they are about the core of education. What we're trying to do is be much more of a pure play educational institution. And for other things, like, for example, athletics, to share facilities with other institutions. If somebody wants to play basketball, we don't need to build a gym. They can go somewhere else for that.
Interesting.
So we're really just focusing in on the core of education. And if you strip away all of those peripherals and you say, I'm not even going to get into this arms race here, I want to just be excellent at what we are, it's amazing how much you can actually slim down the cost of education. And so for that reason, our tuition is only $9,000 a year, whereas the average private school in America is $42,000 a year.
Right. That's amazing. That is amazing. But as you say, a lot of it is recruitment because students want to see a fabulous fitness facility. How have you done your recruiting? And the reason we're speaking to you is because so many people living in our area are going to be attending there this fall. And we're going to speak with them in the second half, one of them. How did you do your recruiting without an awesome fitness area?
Yeah, that's a good question. So because we are a Christian institution and we are leading with our values, we are very much in line with the early church and the Anabaptist faith, and I'm sure many of your listeners would be familiar with those values, that there's not a lot of other options that we have. And we're going for best-in-class education without compromising in any way these faith values. And so when you start to ask the question, how many other institutions are there that are comparable, you get into fairly rarefied territory fairly quickly. And so we really want to be competing for students who want that type of education that isn't just about puffing up our minds. It's about growing spiritually. It's about growing in a much broader capacity. And frankly, being here in Boston, we also are able to offer students an incredible experience in terms of engaging with international students and getting involved in all kinds of, we do a lot of ESL, English as a second language here,
Yes.
opportunities to engage with very broad populations and hopefully to make a great impact from a Christian perspective.
Awesome. Before I let you go, is there a website folks can check out?
Yeah, we're sattlercollege.org. If you just go online and search for Sattler College, Sattler, it's very easy to find us. We do have an email list there. If you go onto their website and you want to get regular updates, we'd be happy to include you in that.
That's wonderful. We were going to be speaking to Austin Lapp, who is a student from the Cambridge area, right here in our listening area, going to be attending Sattler College this fall. In the meantime, Dr. Finney Caruzilla, thank you so much for your time today, and thanks for being with us on our community.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be with you.
We'll be back after these words. Stay with us.